The moon hung swollen and red, as though it wept for the dying. From the battlements of Eldenvale, the cries of men in steel echoed across the stone walls. Flaming arrows arched through the dark, raining hell upon the human kingdom's capital. The banners of House Valinor, the proud silver wolf on black, streamed through the smoke, cutting down the crest of the golden crown of men. The werewolves had come. Their king rode at the front, astride a massive obsidian warhorse, his armor forged from black steel streaked with silver lines that shimmered with moonlight. His name was King Caelan of the Bloodfang, newly crowned, half mad with grief and vengeance. Beneath his helm, his eyes burned molten gold, the mark of a pure-blood alpha, the ancient power that could command entire legions with a growl. He had come to avenge his kin, to make the humans bleed for what they had done. The gates fell in less than an hour. Caelan dismounted, tearing off his helm as the iron doors crashed inward. His long black hair, streaked with blood, clung to his jaw as he strode into the palace courtyard. His men howling behind him, wolves in their battle forms, eyes glowing, claws soaked red. The scent of silver still lingered in the air, faint, metallic, poisonous. His people had died choking on that scent, burned alive by treachery masked as alliance. His mother, his sister, his cousin. He could still hear their screams. A human soldier lunged from behind a column. Caelan's hand shot out, catching the blade mid-swing. Silver scorched his palm, but he didn't flinch. With one motion, he snapped the man's neck and flung his body aside. "Search every hall," he growled to his generals. "Bring me the king and his bloodline." His voice rolled like thunder. The wolves obeyed. Inside the grand hall, the human royal family stood gathered: the king, queen, 2 sons, and the youngest, Princess Evelina. She wore no crown, only a simple white gown stained with soot and terror. Her trembling hands clutched her brother's arm as the doors burst open. Caelan entered like a storm. Behind him, his pack dragged the bodies of the council, their throats torn open. They threw them at the foot of the throne. The queen screamed, falling to her knees beside her kin. The human king drew his sword, though his hand shook. "Monster," he spat. "You come to murder my people, my children?" "No," Caelan said quietly, his voice far too calm for the slaughter around him. "I came to collect a debt." He flicked his hand. A wolf general stepped forward, tossing a silver-laced goblet before the throne, the very one sent months ago as a gift of peace. The inside still reeked of poison. The king froze, realization dawning. You sent it," Caelan interrupted. "To my father, to my court, to my people." His eyes darkened to molten fire. "Did you think we would not learn the scent of your treachery?" He moved before anyone could speak, swift as shadow, brutal as judgment. His sword, black as the night sky, cleaved the queen's head clean from her shoulders. Blood splattered across the white gown of Princess Evelina. She gasped, a sound strangled between a scream and a sob, frozen in horror as her mother's body fell at her feet. Caelan's gaze flicked to her, and for the first time he stopped. The chaos around him dimmed, her scent faint. Vanilla and rain cut through the smoke and blood. Something ancient within him stirred, recognition flooding through his veins with the force of a curse. His wolf went still. "Mate." He blinked, almost disbelieving. The universe had to be mocking him, his fated mate, the daughter of his enemy. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned his gaze to the human king, voice low and lethal. "You will not die yet." The human king lifted his chin. "Kill me and be done with it." "Oh, I will," Caelan said softly, "but not before you witness your daughter's fate. There will be no crown left for your line to inherit, only a bond written in blood." He reached out, grabbed Evelina by the arm, and hauled her toward him. She tried to pull away, eyes blazing with hatred and fear, but he only smiled cold, wolfish, unyielding. "I, Caelan of the Bloodfang, king of the werewolves," he declared to the silent burning hall, "claim the princess of Eldenvale as my bride, by right of conquest and by blood debt. Our kingdoms will be bound, so that your treachery ends with her." He leaned close, his breath brushing her ear, a dark whisper only she could hear. "And whether you wish it or not, little moon, you will be mine." "I warned your kind never to touch ours," he said, voice low and sharp. "Now watch what it means to defy the blood of wolves." He turned, bootsteps echoing, spilling blood as freely as he breathed, and caught sight of her again. The princess, Evelina. She had not moved, though her body shook. Her gown, once white, clung to her with the blood of her mother. Her lips trembled, eyes wide and glistening not with cowardice, but with shock that hadn't yet turned to fear. She was staring at him. For the briefest flicker of a heartbeat, Caelan forgot to breathe. Her scent was a blade to his chest. It was wrong, unfair, fate's mockery. He blinked, and the beast inside him rose with a snarl and clamored to claim its prize. No, not her. It must be a mistake. Not the daughter of the butcher who had murdered his kin. He tore his gaze away, forced steel into his spine, but the ache in his chest refused to fade. "Take her, brothers," he ordered hoarsely. "Alive." The men hesitated, uncertain. They'd seen that flicker in their king's eyes. So Caelan, to prove a point to prove he felt nothing, turned and struck down the nearest one himself. The sword came down swift and merciless. The body hit the marble floor with a dull thud. The second brother screamed, lunged, and Caelan's hand shot out, claws bursting from his fingers. He crushed the young man's throat with one brutal twist. "Your line ends with you," he said coldly, voice dripping with venom. "Save your breath for your gods." He threw the corpse aside like a broken doll. Evelina made a sound, small, strangled and dropped to her knees beside her fallen brother. The sight twisted something deep inside Caelan's chest, a sharp, unfamiliar pull he despised. His wolf stirred again, restless. "Mate." He clenched his jaw, furious with the universe for such cruelty. The bond burned beneath his skin like a brand, every pulse of her heartbeat echoing in his chest. The king of men stepped forward, sword raised. "You think you can slaughter my bloodline and take what's mine? You are filth-cursed beast." Caelan's smile was cruel and feral. "Then pray to your gods to unleash their wrath, human king, for I am what you made me." He lunged. The clash was over before it began. The human king's sword met Caelan's with a shriek of metal, then shattered beneath the strength of the werewolf's swing. Caelan drove his blade through the man's shoulder, pinning him to the throne. Blood gushed from the wound. The king choked, his crown tumbling down the steps. Caelan leaned close, breath hot against the dying man's ear. "You took my family from me, so I will take yours and make her your legacy's ruin." He turned to Evelina, then her face pale, streaked with tears and ash, and reached out, gripping her chin. She flinched, but didn't turn away. "Look at me," he ordered. She did. Hatred mingled with grief burned behind her fear, that same defiant spark that had glowed in her father's eyes. Caelan almost smiled. Good. He wanted her fire. He would break it slowly. "I cannot wait to make you beg for my touch and root myself into your blood and womb," he said, voice low. "Dangerous?" Her lips parted, trembling. "I would rather die." His eyes softened for a moment, then turned to molten gold, wild and cruel. "You will wish for death before the end, little princess, but you will not have it. The moon has bound us, and I do not defy the will of the moon." He looked back at her father, still struggling to breathe. "You hear her fate, old man? That is your punishment. She will bear the mark of the wolves, not the crown of men." Then, with a twist of his wrist, Caelan tore his blade free. The human king slumped lifeless against the throne. Silence fell over the hall, heavy and absolute. Only the crackle of fire and Evelina's ragged breathing filled the air. Caelan stepped back, wiping blood from his sword. For a moment, he looked at her, observing with his enhanced sight, and something inside him shifted. It was not mercy. Not yet. Just the faint, unbearable awareness that she was his, whether he wanted her or not. "Chain her," he commanded. "She rides with me to the north." As his soldiers moved to obey, Evelina lifted her chin. tears gleaming like shattered glass. "Monster," she whispered. Caelan didn't deny it. He turned toward the burning doors, voice low enough for only her to hear. "I was. Long before you met me, and will continue to be long after you are swollen with my seed." Chapter 2. The Wolves' Outpost. The cold woke her first. Evelina's fingers brushed rough fur and frozen earth. Her lungs burned when she breathed, air sharp and clean, far from the smoke and screams of Eldenvale. Somewhere nearby, wolves howled deep, resonant calls that rolled through the mountains like thunder. She tried to sit up, but the movement pulled at her wrists. Iron bit into her skin. Chains. Her hands were bound before her, and a heavy cloak not hers was thrown over her shoulders. Memory came crashing back. The siege, her mother's head, her brother's blood, and him the monster with gold eyes who claimed her as his bride. Her stomach turned. She swallowed hard and looked around. They were in a vast encampment that stretched across a frozen valley, lit by hundreds of torches. The werewolves moved like an army forged from night itself, towering figures in black leather and fur, eyes gleaming in the dark. Some wore armor, others were half-shifted, their claws glinting under the moonlight as they tended to fires or sharpened blades. The air reeked of smoke, pine, and iron. Everything smelled alive, wild, dangerous. A tall figure approached, his stride unmistakable even before she saw his face. Caelan. He had shed his armor for a dark tunic, but blood still stained his sleeves. His hair was loose now, falling over his shoulders in black waves. The golden glow in his eyes dimmed, but not by much. The sight of him made something primal twist inside her chest. Anger, fear, something she refused to name. He stopped in front of her. For a long moment he said nothing, just studied her with unreadable calm, the kind that felt more dangerous than rage. "You're awake," he said finally, his voice low, rough as gravel. Evelina straightened despite the chains. "You murdered my family," she said, voice trembling but clear. "If you're waiting for gratitude, you'll die waiting." A flicker of amusement maybe touched his mouth. "I'm not waiting for gratitude, princess. Only obedience. Then you'll wait longer still." He took a slow breath, his eyes narrowing. "You're brave," he said softly, almost to himself. "Foolish, but brave." He turned to the guards. "Unchain her." The men hesitated. One of them glanced nervously at the king. "My lord," "I said unchain her," Caelan repeated. His tone left no room for question. The chains fell away a moment later, clattering against the frozen ground. Evelina rubbed her raw wrists, glaring up at him. "Why?" she demanded. "So you can pretend to be merciful before you slaughter me too?" His gaze dropped to her wrists, the bruised skin, the trembling hands then rose to meet her eyes. "If I wanted you dead," he said, "you would not have woken." "Then why am I here?" Caelan stepped closer. She could smell the smoke and blood on him, the faint, wild musk that wasn't quite human. It made her want to recoil and, to her disgust, shiver. "Because fate has a cruel sense of humor," he murmured, "and because I gave your father my word that you would live." I did not say how. Evelina flinched as he reached out, catching her chin between his fingers. His touch was firm, his skin calloused, heat searing through her. His eyes searched hers as though trying to read something written in a language he barely understood. "You don't smell like them," he said quietly, "the humans who reek of fear and deceit. You smell of rain, of the high fields before a storm. Let me go," she whispered. He tilted his head. "And lose my prize?" "No." She shoved his hand away. "I'm not your prize." Something dark crossed his face, and for a moment she thought he'd strike her. Instead, he took a step back, voice low and cold again. "You are now my queen. You'll be treated as such. You'll eat, rest, and live until the blood moon rises. Then we wed." Her heart lurched. "Wed? You slaughtered my family." "Yes," he said simply, "and you'll marry me for it." She stared at him, horror dawning. You're insane." Caelan's smile was slow, sharp. "Perhaps. But the gods marked you as mine the moment I breathed your scent. That is not something even death can change." He turned and gestured for her to follow. "Come, you'll learn the customs of your new people before you join them. If you resist..." He glanced back, his eyes gleaming gold again. "I won't chain you. I'll teach you why the wolves obey their king." Her pulse hammered in her throat, but she followed. They crossed through the camp, hundreds of wolves watching her in silence as she passed. Some bowed their heads slightly to Caelan, but their eyes lingered on her, curious, disdainful, predatory. Whispers followed her. Human, weak, the Alpha's curse. Caelan ignored them, leading her to a large tent at the edge of the camp. Inside, a single fire burned in a pit, casting golden light over furs and weapons. Maps were scattered across a wooden table. This was his den. "Sit," he ordered. She stayed standing. He looked at her for a moment, then sighed. "You'll learn, eventually." He poured something into a wooden cup and handed it to her. "Drink." She hesitated, glaring at it. "You think I'm foolish enough to..." "It's water," he said flatly. "If I wanted to poison you, I wouldn't waste good water doing it." She took it more from defiance than trust and drank, her throat dry and burning. He watched her the entire time, the way a wolf watches a flame, fascinated and wary. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Why not kill me and end your war?" Caelan's expression hardened. "Because killing you would be merciful, and I am not merciful." He stepped closer again, lowering his voice. "You are the daughter of the man who murdered my kin. But you are also the only one the moon has given me. That is a curse I will not deny. So you will live, and you will learn what it means to belong to a wolf." Her breath caught. "I'll never belong to you." His smile was a shadow. "You already do. You just haven't felt it yet." He turned away before she could reply, his jaw tight. The bond burned beneath his skin, that unbearable pull toward her that made his every instinct war with itself. He could smell her fear, and beneath it, the faint, forbidden echo of something else. Desire, recognition, fate. He snarled under his breath, angry at himself, at the gods, at the cruel twist of destiny that had tied him to the one woman he could never truly have. Outside, the wolves howled again, long, mournful, and wild. Inside, the silence between them stretched like a drawn blade. Evelina set the cup down with trembling hands. "Then we're both cursed," she whispered. Caelan's eyes met hers, gold meeting storm gray. "Yes," he said, "but only one of us will survive it." Chapter 3. The Journey North. The wind cut through her hair like knives. Evelina gritted her teeth, holding the cloak Caelan had thrown over her shoulders tighter around her. The wagon rocked over the frozen earth, and every jolt sent her stomach twisting. She hadn't spoken since leaving the camp, hadn't dared. The memory of the slaughter still clung to her, her mother's blood on the marble floors, her brothers' faces forever etched in terror, the gold eyes of the monster who had claimed her as his bride. He rode beside her, silent, the black warhorse beneath him snorting clouds of frost into the night. His cloak flapped behind him like a shadow. Even in motion, his presence was suffocating all power, all heat, all danger. He didn't speak to her, not yet. He didn't need to. Every twitch of his jaw, every set of his shoulders, spoke more than words. She could smell the iron on his skin, the faint tang of blood still clinging to him, the wild scent of his wolf. The wolves flanked them, a living wall of shadow and teeth. Their howls rolled over the snow-covered hills, warning trespassers, carving a path through the wilderness. Evelina shivered, not just from cold, but from the knowledge that she was utterly at their mercy. "Are you always this silent?" she finally whispered, more to herself than to him. His eyes flicked to her, gold in the moonlight. "Only when I'm hunting. And when you're... not?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She could feel his gaze burning through her, measuring her like a wolf sizing prey, and something more, something dangerous and private. Hours passed in frozen silence, punctuated only by the snap of branches under hooves and paws. The world was white and silent, broken by the occasional wolf howl and the crunch of ice beneath the wagon wheels. Every sound was magnified in the cold, each one a reminder of how far she had traveled from her home, from her family. Finally, as night deepened, the wagon stopped. They had reached a plateau overlooking a dark forest, the kind of wilderness that could swallow a person whole. Wolves dispersed to patrol, some shifting into full forms, muscles rippling under fur, eyes glinting in the torchlight. "Out," Caelan ordered. Evelina hesitated. She had no choice but to obey. As she stepped down, the snow pressed cold against her bare hands. He was close enough that she could feel his heat, his power. "Eat," he said simply, gesturing to a small fire with food laid on a simple wooden platter. Meat, raw and rare, with thick bread and dried fruit. He did not sit, only watched as she reached for it. She glared. "I don't eat this." "You will," he said, calm and absolute. "You will learn the ways of my people. You will survive. Or die." Her stomach growled despite her pride. She picked at the meat, tasting the iron tang. The wolves waited in silent patience, eyes sharp and calculating. Finally, she met his gaze, defiance blazing. "And what if I refuse? You kill me?" He smiled slow, dark, and dangerous. "I am a king. I do not negotiate with prey." The words should have terrified her, and in another life they would have. But something in the raw honesty of his brutality made her shiver in a way she hated. The night stretched on. The wind bit at their faces, and the wolves howled at the moon. Somewhere deep inside her, Evelina realized she was learning not obedience, not yet, but survival. She was learning to read their movements, to sense their moods, to anticipate danger. And through it all, Caelan remained a constant presence, near enough that she felt his heat, far enough to remain untouchable. At one point, she stumbled on a root, and a wolf lunged before she could even scream. A hand, warm, unyielding, impossibly strong, caught her by the arm, dragging her upright. She looked up into gold eyes, into the chiseled face of a man who was both terror and desire. And for the first time since the siege, she felt the pull she could not name. "You are mine," he whispered, voice low and lethal, brushing against her ear. "Even if your heart hates me." She twisted away, shoving him lightly. "You..." He caught her wrist with one hand, steadying her against the cold. His thumb brushed her skin, not gentle but not cruel either. "Do not test me," he growled. "Not here. Not now. Not when the night is dark enough for wolves to feast." Her pulse thundered. She wanted to be angry. She tried. But even as fear clenched her gut, something darker, something electric slithered through her. The night passed with wolves patrolling the perimeter, the campfire burning low, and Caelan watching her every move. Exhausted and cold, she finally curled on a fur, chains removed but still invisible. Invisible in the sense of being constantly measured, constantly observed. And all night, she dreamed of gold eyes and black hair, of power and danger and fire, of the man who had killed her family and claimed her as his own. Chapter 4. The Blood Moon Approaches. The northern stronghold lay silent beneath the snow, a fortress carved into cliffs and jagged rock. Wolves patrolled every edge, and the scent of the forest clung to every corner of the encampment. The cold burned, but it could not touch the heat building in the air, the tension between them, and the anticipation of the blood moon wedding. Evelina had been healed, bruises faded, cuts stitched, her hair combed, her gown warm and soft against her skin. She looked human again, untouched by the violence of the siege. Yet she knew the wolf who claimed her had not forgotten, and she had not forgotten him. The attack came at dusk. The first signs were subtle, a twig snapping, a shadow slipping between the trees. Caelan's ears twitched, his senses slicing through the silence. The wolves around the stronghold bristled, growls rolling like distant thunder. Then the rogues struck. A band of humans cloaked and armed surged from the woods, their eyes wild with desperation. They wanted the prize of the Wolf King, or perhaps revenge for Eldenvale. They found the stronghold lightly defended on the periphery. Caelan reacted before anyone could shout. The air turned thick with the scent of blood and fear. His wolves shifted instantly, a living wall of snarling muscle and fur. But the humans were reckless, and one stumbled into Evelina's path, grazing her arm. Blood poured immediately, bright against her pale skin. The sight of her bleeding ignited something in Caelan that could not be controlled. His howl shattered the night, a sound that made the earth itself tremble. He became a storm. The first rogue barely had time to raise a sword before Caelan's claws tore through him, blackened steel slicing and bone crushing. The frenzy was grotesque and unstoppable, a blur of teeth, blood, and fury. Wolves joined him, but even they seemed to hang back at moments, as if fearful of the sheer violence emanating from their king. Caelan moved like death incarnate, the snow beneath him soaked red. Blood sprayed in arcs, staining the trees, the rocks, the white ground. His golden eyes glowed brighter, pupils wide with pure feral rage. Every motion was precise yet horrific, a massacre perfected. Evelina screamed, rushing to his side. "Caelan, stop!" He froze for a heartbeat, but only because her voice pierced the madness. She saw the blood on his hands, the way his claws dripped scarlet, the carnage spread across the snow. She should have been terrified, and yet she couldn't tear her eyes away. He was a force of nature, merciless and perfect in his wrath. Her hands shook as she stepped closer. It's fine. I'm okay. Just blood, that's all. Nothing too bad." His eyes snapped to her, the golden fury colliding with recognition and panic. The frenzy ebbed like a tide pulled back, leaving the devastation in its wake. Caelan's chest heaved, and he looked down at his hands, at the blood of rogues, at the snow, at the streak of crimson on her arm. You're sure?" His voice was low, thick with emotion. "I'm sure," she said firmly, gripping his forearm. "It's a lot of blood, yes. But it's not deep. It's not serious." He let out a growl that seemed half relief, half frustration, a sound that rumbled through the walls of the fortress and the air between them. His wolf stirred beside him, uneasy, and he turned sharply, staring down the surviving rogues, who were already retreating. Do not ever touch her again," he hissed, voice lethal, teeth bared, "or you will not live long enough to regret it." The rogues vanished into the forest, leaving behind only tracks and the lingering copper tang of blood. Evelina stood close, her hands brushing his chest, feeling the violent heartbeat beneath the black tunic. "You don't have to protect me like that," she said softly. I'm not that fragile, and you're not a monster. Not to me." Something in him cracked a sliver of vulnerability hidden beneath the alpha, beneath the rage, beneath the mountain of grief and fury. He bent down slightly, just enough for his face to hover near hers. His golden gaze softened, still fierce, still dangerous, but tethered now by her voice, by her presence. "You are my mate," he murmured. "You are all that matters, and the world will bleed before I let anything touch you." Evelina's pulse thundered. "Then don't let it consume you," she whispered, laying a hand against his chest. "I'm not hurt. Not really. Let the blood be theirs, not ours." He inhaled sharply, the growl dying in his throat, replaced by a low, tremulous hum of restraint. His wolf shifted at his side, calming, and the forest seemed to exhale with them. That night, as the fire crackled and wolves curled around the stronghold, Evelina watched Caelan pace, muscles taut, eyes glowing even in the flickering torchlight. She knew the blood moon would bring them together, and yet, beneath the fear and awe, she felt something dangerous stir, the undeniable pull of her twin flame. And she knew that when they finally met beneath the blood moon, nothing, not fire, not steel, not hate, would ever be simple between them. Chapter 5. The Blood Moon Wedding. The moon rose, swollen and red, casting its bloody glow over the northern cliffs. Snow and ice shimmered under its light, and the air carried a scent of pine, iron, and wolf. Every leaf, every stone, every flicker of shadow seemed alive with anticipation. The wolves gathered in a circle, shifting back and forth between human form and beast, teeth gleaming, claws scraping against rock. The alpha stood at the center, Caelan, his black hair whipping in the wind, golden eyes blazing with intensity. His sword lay across his back, but it was his gaze that promised both danger and possession. Evelina stood opposite him, hands folded at her waist, chains long since removed. Her gown had been replaced with something simpler, fur-lined, dark, designed to withstand the cold and the night. Yet even in this practical attire, she looked fragile against the raw power surrounding her. And yet, she was far from fragile. The pack circled them like shadows, eyes glimmering in the firelight. Whispers of incantations, guttural and rhythmic, echoed off the cliffs. This was no human wedding, no exchange of vows in a gilded hall. This was the binding of a human to a wolf, the marking of a twin flame under the cursed, inevitable gaze of the blood moon. Caelan stepped closer, boots crunching in the frost. The air between them seemed to vibrate, a taut wire of tension and desire. Evelina refused to meet his eyes. Her pulse pounded, part fear, part anticipation, part something she had not yet dared to name. "You are mine," Caelan said, voice low, vibrating with authority. "By right of conquest, by bond of blood, by the will of the moon. Your hate is yours, but your fate belongs to me." "I hate you," Evelina whispered, chin lifted defiantly. "Do you hear me? I've hated you from the moment I saw you." He took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Good. I would not want it otherwise. Hate sharpens the bond, fear strengthens it, and desire will break you when the time comes." The wolves shifted impatiently, sensing the rising tension. Caelan extended a hand. "Kneel," he commanded. Evelina froze, then slowly sank to one knee. Pride burned in her chest, but instinct told her that defiance and submission could coexist, that she could be unyielding even as she obeyed. He crouched slightly, golden eyes leveling with hers. The air between them seemed to hum. Every heartbeat, every breath, every faint exhalation of their lungs was a rhythm, a signal, a promise of what was to come. "You smell like the storm before the rain," he murmured, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Like the first bite of frost on the wind. Like home, only mine." Evelina flinched, anger rising to mask the tremor that ran through her. "I am not yours," she spat softly, though her voice betrayed the faint catch of uncertainty. He smiled, feral, patient, lethal. "Not yet, but you will be. Even your hate cannot resist me." Then the ritual began. Wolves howled, their voices joining in a primal chorus. Caelan circled her slowly, tracing the edge of the ceremonial fire. The moonlight glinted off the black steel on his arms, and every muscle moved with lethal grace. He stopped behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, the press of his presence, the silent promise that he could crush her in a heartbeat, and that he would protect her in a heartbeat just as easily. "Do you accept your fate?" he asked, low and commanding. Evelina hesitated. Her gaze flicked to the fire, to the wolves, to the red moon. She swallowed hard. "I survive it." Caelan's hand brushed her shoulder firm, unyielding. His other hand rested near hers, a silent claim. "Then the bond begins," he murmured. The wolves' howls reached a crescendo. Caelan lowered his head, lips brushing the crown of her head, not a kiss, but a mark of dominance and possession. His voice, soft and intimate, slid into her ear. "You are my twin flame, my mate, and I will teach you in time the depths of the bond we share. The blood moon marks you as mine, whether you wish it or not." Evelina felt a shiver run through her, not fear, not entirely, but awe. Rage. Yes, she hated him, yet a strange, undeniable pull tugged at her heart. Her pulse raced, heat rising despite the cold. Caelan straightened, lifting his gaze to the moon, then back to her. "Rise," he commanded. She obeyed. Standing before him, every ounce of defiance in her posture, she met his golden gaze. And in that look, in that moment, she saw the man beneath the monster not mercy, not softness, not weakness, but a raw, consuming fire. A fire she was both terrified of and drawn to. The wolves quieted. The ritual ended. The blood moon hung high, red and eternal. And in its light, Evelina knew the fight between them, between hatred and desire, defiance and inevitability, had only just begun. But for the first time, she did not look away from him. Chapter 6. The King, Beneath the Wolf. The fortress was carved into the mountain itself, its towers and halls glowing faintly under the silver light of dawn. Smoke curled from stone chimneys, the scent of pine and steel thick in the air. Evelina had not expected warmth here, and yet the place pulsed with life. Wolves moved between the courtyards, some in human form, some not, carrying food, tending to fires, repairing walls damaged from the last siege. It was a kingdom breathing through wounds, fierce, scarred, and proud. Her chambers overlooked the frozen valley below. She often found herself there at sunrise, staring at the white horizon, wondering if hatred could truly keep her warm forever. Caelan had left before dawn. He had said nothing to her, only brushed past in his usual silence, his cloak trailing behind like a storm. But as the day grew, she saw him again. Not the brutal conqueror she'd first met, not the savage who had taken her home in blood. He was standing in the courtyard, surrounded by children. Small, thin, wide-eyed, some missing parents, some scarred, some too young to understand loss. They looked up at him with awe, not fear, awe. He crouched low to the smallest, offering a wolf's fang tied to a leather cord. The boy grinned, clutching it tight. Caelan ruffled his hair, murmuring something low and kind before rising again. Evelina stood at her window, heart tight with something she refused to name. "This was your father's doing," came a voice behind her. An older woman, gray-haired, one of the court attendants assigned to her. "The human kings poisoned our wells with silver dust. The children lost their kin that winter. The king visits them every morning." Evelina turned sharply. "Do you think that excuses what he's done? What he did to mine?" The woman bowed her head. "No, but grief has many faces, my queen, my queen." The title still felt like a blade pressed to her throat. Later that day, she found him again, this time alone. The mountain path led to a grove of ancient stones, carved with runes and symbols, encircled by frostbitten flowers. Graves. Caelan's kneeling in the snow, his hand resting on a marker of black stone. His head was bowed, his hair falling loose around his face. No guards, no wolves, only silence and the wind. Evelina hesitated at the edge of the clearing. She should have turned away, should have let him mourn alone, but something rooted her there. He spoke without looking up. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was rough, not cruel, not commanding, human. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said softly. "You didn't." He finally looked at her, eyes molten gold in the cold light. "You wanted to see the monster at his weakest. Here I am. She swallowed, unsure. "I didn't come to see you weak." He rose slowly, snow crunching beneath his boots. "Then why are you here, Evelina?" Her name on his lips always felt like a touch. "Because I wanted to know if anything you do is real. The children, this place. You kill without mercy, yet you mourn like a man who feels too much." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned back to the gravestones. "My mother lies here, my sister, my cousin, all poisoned by gifts your kind sent. Silver powder hidden in the wax of candles. I watched my mother cough blood for weeks before she begged me to end it." The words sliced through her. "I don't regret taking your kingdom," he said quietly. "I regret that the ones who deserved to pay weren't the ones who died." Evelina's lips parted, but no words came. The cold bit at her skin, but the heat between them, the raw ache of grief and fury and something nameless felt suffocating. "You hate me," he continued, "and maybe you should. But I will rebuild what your father broke. I will make sure no child goes hungry, no pack starves, no grave lies untended." She wanted to hate him. Gods, she tried. But when he turned to leave, snow dusting his shoulders like ash, she saw not a beast but a man hollowed by loss, filled only with purpose. That night, Evelina dreamed, she stood in the ruined halls of her father's castle. Moonlight poured through shattered glass. Her mother appeared first, eyes pale as frost. Then her brothers, small and trembling, their hands reaching toward her. "Don't forget," her mother whispered. "Don't forgive." Her brothers' voices echoed hers, overlapping, insistent. "He killed us. He burned our home. He will burn you too." Evelina fell to her knees, sobbing. "I don't want to forget you." "Then hate him," her mother hissed. "Hate him until it kills him." She woke with a gasp, heart pounding, the echo of their voices still clinging to her. The room was dark, the fire burned low, and in the silence she could hear footsteps. Caelan stood at the threshold, watching her with that same unreadable expression. "You were crying," he said simply. She turned away, wiping her eyes. It was just a dream. He didn't move closer, but his voice dropped, softer than she had ever heard it. Dreams carry truth the waking world denies. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly between them, the faintest warmth against the chill. And though she told herself she hated him, that she should hate him, the truth twisted painfully in her chest. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure she could. Chapter 7. The weight of restraint. Days bled into one another beneath the shadow of the northern mountains. The castle, built from black stone and frost, stood like a beast sleeping under snow, and within it, two souls circled each other like fire and ice, never touching, always burning. Evelina saw him only in passing now. In the mornings, he was gone before dawn. In the evenings, she sometimes glimpsed him returning through the great doors, skin glistening with sweat, his tunic torn and bloodied, eyes hollow from exhaustion. He would nod once, never a word, and disappear into his chambers. But she knew where he went. The training arena lay behind the fortress, carved into stone, open to the wind. At night, she could hear the echo of his blade striking iron, the low growl of effort, the shattering roar when his control cracked. He fought until the snow around him was painted with blood his own. The pack whispered of their king's torment, that he trained past the point of strength, not for glory, but for silence to drown the pull of his bond. Sometimes, Evelina stood at her balcony, watching the faint flicker of torches from the arena below, and she wondered what kind of man punished himself to keep a promise no one had asked of him. Caelan could still feel her scent in the halls, that soft, human sweetness that made his wolf stir restlessly. Every time she passed, his pulse betrayed him, his body betrayed him. The bond between them was a living thing, relentless, demanding, aching to be answered. His beast wanted her scent in his skin, his mark on her throat. But every time the urge rose, he reminded himself, she did not choose this, and he refused to become the monster she already believed him to be. So he fought instead, sword against blade, strength against exhaustion, will against instinct. He pushed himself until his muscles tore and his breath burned his lungs, until there was nothing left in him but quiet, aching numbness. His generals watched in silence, never daring to interrupt. They saw the king who had broken empires brought low not by war, but by restraint. Evelina began to notice things. The way he always walked on the windward side when they crossed the courtyards, shielding her from the cold without speaking of it. The quiet gestures Emile left outside her chamber when she refused to dine with him. The repaired music box she'd found on her table one morning, the same one she had carried from her ruined home, broken during the siege. No note, no explanation. And yet, when she wound it, The soft melody that played made her throat tighten painfully. Sometimes she would find him in the Great Hall, speaking softly with his advisors, his voice rough but calm. He asked about food stores, injured soldiers, widowed mothers. He remembered names, faces, and stories, a king who ruled with claw and heart in equal measure. He was nothing like her father, and that terrified her more than his violence ever had. One evening, she found herself walking the empty corridor that led to the arena. The sound of steel rang faintly from below. Her steps echoed softly against the cold stone. When she reached the archway, she saw him. Caelan stood shirtless in the moonlight, every muscle cut in shadow and sheen. Blood streaked his chest where the blade had grazed him, but he didn't stop. His sword struck against a stone dummy, again and again, until the weapon split and his knuckles bled. Still he fought. "Enough," Evelina whispered before she could stop herself. The words slipped into the stillness like a breath of wind. He froze, turned. For a moment, neither spoke. The torchlight flickered between them, catching in his golden eyes burning with pain, need, and unbearable restraint. "You shouldn't see this," he said hoarsely. "Why?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because I might see the man beneath the beast?" He gave a short, bitter laugh, running a hand through his damp hair. "There is no man beneath, only a monster trying not to hurt what he wants most." The words sank into her chest, deep and sharp. "You think pain redeems you?" He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his face. "No, it reminds me what I could become if I stopped fighting." She stepped closer against her better judgment. "You don't have to fight forever." His breath hitched. He turned away, shoulders rigid, hands trembling slightly. "You don't understand, Evelina. Every moment I'm near you, I hear the bond. It calls, it screams. My wolf knows you, my body knows you, and yet you look at me as if I am the end of all things." She wanted to speak to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the words died on her tongue. He took a slow breath, then dropped his sword to the ground. "So I fight until I can't feel it, until I forget what it means to want." Silence stretched between them, thick as the night air. Evelina's throat ached. "And if you never stop fighting?" His gaze lifted to hers, filled with a sadness that made her chest tighten. "Then I die knowing I never broke what was already too fragile to survive me." He walked past her, body heavy with fatigue, the scent of blood and steel lingering in his wake. When the doors closed behind him, Evelina remained where she was cold, breathless, and trembling. Because for the first time since her world burned, she realized the monster she hated was also the only man who had ever treated her as if her choice still mattered. Chapter 8: The Ghosts of Paper and Blood. The Northern Library was a cathedral of silence. Tall shelves rose toward vaulted ceilings, dust motes dancing in the shafts of pale morning light. The air was thick with parchment and ink, the quiet scent of memory. Evelina had found the place by accident. She'd been wandering the corridors again, restless from dreams she could not escape, when she noticed a door left slightly ajar. Inside, warmth and quiet called to her like sanctuary. It was strange, finding peace here in the heart of her enemy's home. But the book's ancient tomes, scrolls, records sealed with wax-whispered secrets that begged to be known. She trailed her fingers along the spines, pausing at one shelf labeled Archives of the Southern Conflict. Her breath caught. Her kingdom's crest was pressed into the cracked leather bindings. Curiosity, dread, and something heavier urged her forward. She pulled a volume free. The first page was written in her own language, the flowing calligraphy of human scribes. She read the title, Treaty of Blood and Binding, year 701 of the Wolf Calendar. Her fingers trembled. The Wolf Calendar, the werewolf's way of marking time. Why would her kingdom record treaties under their system? She turned the page. The entries were cold and precise, lists of demands, decrees, orders. 3 villages burned to force the submission of the northern tribes. The children of chieftains taken as wards for negotiation. Silver diluted into the wells to weaken the beasts before assault. Her stomach twisted. She read on, each line cutting deeper. 20 women gathered as assurance of peace, their offspring to be raised among men for loyalty. Crops salted, livestock burned. A warning to the beasts, their king impaled on silver to mark the beginning of a new era of man's dominion. Evelina's hands shook so violently, she nearly tore the page. Her father's name was there, and his father's before him. Each king had signed, sealed, and sanctioned these atrocities. Every one of them had called it necessary, civilized, orderly. But what stared back at her from the page was not civilization, it was savagery. She pressed a hand to her mouth, staggering back. Her chest ached, as if her very blood rebelled against what it carried. The room spun. She saw again the look in Caelan's eyes at the graves, the orphaned children's laughter in the courtyard, the wolves who guarded her not with cruelty, but vigilance. And she saw her own people, her father's soldiers smiling as they poured silver dust into the wells of the north. A voice startled her. "You've seen enough." Caelan stood at the doorway, his broad frame cast in shadow, his golden eyes faintly glowing in the dim light. Evelina froze, the book clutched to her chest. "You knew." He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. "I wanted you to find it." Her lips parted. "Why?" "To shame me, to free you." The words struck her harder than any blow. He stopped beside her, gaze drifting to the open book. His jaw tightened. "Your father was not the first. My people remember generations of pain. Our mothers sang to us of the day the rivers turned silver, of children taken from their beds, of a king impaled to make your kind feel safe." Evelina's throat closed. "I didn't know." "I believe you." His voice softened. "You were a child. But now you are a queen, and a queen must see the truth of her blood." She closed the book, tears stinging her eyes. "All this time, we called you monsters." He looked at her then, really looked, and there was no triumph in his gaze, only exhaustion. "Perhaps we were. But monsters born from yours, the silence between them was heavy, filled with ghosts." Evelina sank onto a nearby bench, the book still clutched in her trembling hands. "You hate me for their sins." Caelan's expression flickered, something like pain crossing his features. "I wanted to. For a long time I did. But hate cannot build what vengeance destroys." She looked up at him, startled by the quiet conviction in his voice. He went on, voice low and rough. "My father still lies dying because of the silver they sent. My people starve while we rebuild, and every day I wake knowing my mate wears the bloodline of those who tried to erase us. Tell me, Evelina, how do I love you without betraying them?" Her tears fell silently. "I don't know. Nor do I." He turned away, his shoulders heavy with unspoken ache. "That is why I train until my body breaks. That is why I do not touch you. Because I do not trust myself not to love you, even when I shouldn't." She watched him leave, her heart splintering with confusion and guilt. The door closed behind him, and she was alone again, but not as she had been before. Her father's ghost lingered in her mind, proud and smiling, but now his image was smeared with blood and smoke. That night, she dreamed again her mother, her brothers, their faces pale and cold, whispering from the shadows, "He is the enemy. He will destroy you as he did us." And yet, when Evelina woke, it was not their faces that haunted her. It was Caelan's voice, soft and broken. "How do I love you without betraying them?" For the first time, she didn't know which answer would hurt more to forgive or to remember. Chapter 9. The Arrow and the Oath. The night had turned cold and still, draped in a silence that felt wrong. Evelina stood on the terrace of the western tower, her hands resting lightly on the carved stone balustrade. Below, the courtyard was alive with the hum of steel against steel, the sound of Caelan's warriors sparring by torchlight. It was past midnight, yet the king was among them, his movements a blur of brute precision. His strikes were not for skill tonight, but for release, for restraint. Every thrust of his blade, every grunt of exertion, spoke of a man at war with himself. For weeks since their wedding, he had been distant but dutiful, a ghostly sentinel at her side. He'd not touched her again, though the mark on his neck still glowed faintly whenever she was near. His patience gnawed at her. His self-restraint, noble, terrible, and lonely, haunted her dreams. She had come to know him beyond the stories of her childhood, the monster who burned kingdoms and devoured men. Caelan, she was learning, was made of flesh and torment. His silence had depth, his violence, purpose, and yet her heart still recoiled, even as it betrayed her with pity. From her vantage, she watched disarm a soldier twice his size, send him sprawling into the dirt, and stand over him breathing hard. His bare chest gleamed with sweat under torchlight. When he raised his eyes and found her watching, the air between them cracked like thunder. He froze, chest heaving, the faintest quirk at the corner of his lips betraying something fragile and human. Then, without a word, he sheathed his sword and began up the stairs toward her. Evelina's pulse quickened. She told herself to leave, to retreat before he reached her, but her feet stayed rooted. When he emerged onto the terrace, the night seemed smaller. "You should rest," she said quietly. "I tried," he answered, voice low, rough. "Sleep evades me." She turned from him, staring out toward the distant forests where the wolves roamed. "You push yourself to the brink every night." "I must," he murmured, "else I remember what I've done." Something twisted inside her chest. "You mean what you've done to me, to you, to them, to all of it." His gaze darkened, his jaw flexing. "But if I hadn't, Evelina, there would be no kingdom left to stand on. No people left to rule. You think I took pleasure in spilling your family's blood? I wanted justice, not this." She swallowed hard, anger and grief clashing within her. "Justice? You call that justice?" He stepped closer. "You call poisoning a child justice?" Her breath hitched. "What?" His voice was a snarl now, the words dragged from deep within his chest. "Your father sent silver into our wine cellars. He called it a gift for my mother's coronation. She drank first. She died screaming." Evelina's eyes widened, the blood draining from her face. "That's not true." "It is, little queen." He loomed closer, the heat of him a living thing. "You read the records, didn't you? You know the truth your kind buried under songs of heroism." Her lips parted, but no words came. She had read the records. She had seen the decrees signed by her ancestors, the wars waged in cruelty and deceit. And yet facing him now, this beast who had destroyed everything she'd loved, she did not know which side deserved her hatred more. "I didn't know," she whispered. Caelan's expression softened for the briefest moment. "I know." Her throat tightened. "And yet you hate me." "I can't," he said, voice cracking with a rawness that unsettled her. "That is the curse of it." His hand rose, hesitant, trembling slightly. When his fingers brushed her cheek, a storm seemed to break behind his eyes. He leaned in, the scent of leather, smoke, and rain enveloping her. "Don't," she began, but her voice faltered. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his lips inches from hers. "And I will." But she didn't. And in that heartbeat of surrender, he kissed her. It was not gentle. It was fire and grief and desperate need, an apology and a claim all at once. His hand cradled the back of her neck, his other arm anchoring her to him as though she might vanish if he let go. Evelina felt herself unravel, breath stolen, reason scattered. When he finally broke away, their foreheads rested together, both trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raw. "For everything. For what my father—" He pressed his thumb to her lips, silencing her. "You have nothing to apologize for." Before she could answer, a sound sliced through the night, a faint whir, sharp as a serpent's hiss. Caelan's instincts reacted before thought could. He turned, shoving her to the ground as the first arrow slammed into the pillar beside them, splintering stone. Another followed, then 3 more. The guards below shouted as shadows scaled the courtyard walls. "Stay down," he barked, drawing the dagger from his belt. Evelina's heart pounded as chaos erupted. Figures cloaked in black poured over the parapets, blades glinting silver under torchlight. Assassins, human, from the scent that burned his senses. Caelan lunged at the nearest intruder, slashing across his throat with a snarl. The man gurgled, collapsing as blood sprayed the flagstones. 2 more came at him. Caelan caught one's wrist, twisted, and plunged the attacker's own knife through his ribs. The other swung high. Caelan ducked, drove his shoulder into the man's gut, and sent him toppling over the railing. Then came the sound that froze Evelina's blood. A bowstring, drawn taut, a silver arrow slicing the air. Caelan turned, but not fast enough. Evelina saw it glinting in the torchlight, aimed straight for his heart. Without thinking, she threw herself forward. The arrow struck. Pain bloomed bright and hot beneath her ribs. The force sent her sprawling. Caelan caught her before she hit the stone, his hands slick with her blood. "No." His voice shattered. "No, no, no, Evelina." The remaining assassins faltered. The scent of her blood filled the air, silver poison. His wolf surged forward, snapping the fragile chain of restraint he had forged for her sake. When Caelan lifted his head, his eyes had turned to molten gold. His fangs lengthened. His body trembled with rage that could split the earth. The nearest man screamed as Caelan tore into him, not like a man, but like the beast kings of old. Steel cracked, bones splintered, blood sprayed in arcs across the stone. One assassin tried to run. Caelan leapt the parapet, dragging him back by the throat. The man's pleas were drowned beneath snarls that did not sound human. "Caelan!" Evelina tried to move, her voice faint. "Stop, it's enough." He didn't hear, or couldn't. The last of the assassins dropped his blade and fled toward the lower stairs, but Caelan was already there, ripping through him in one fluid motion. The body crumpled, lifeless, before he turned back toward her. Eyes wild, breath ragged, drenched in the gore of those who dared touch what was his. "Caelan," she whispered again, struggling to rise. Her vision swam. "I'm fine. It's not deep." He fell to his knees beside her, trembling. "You took a silver arrow." "It grazed me," she managed, clutching his wrist. "See? Not fatal." She pressed his blood-stained hand against her side, forcing him to feel her heartbeat. "I'm alive." For a moment, the fury that had consumed him flickered, then broke. He let out a sound somewhere between a growl and a sob, lowering his forehead to hers. "Don't ever do that again," he said hoarsely. "Don't ever take a blade meant for me." Her lips quirked faintly. "Then stop making yourself a target." A strangled laugh escaped him, a sound of disbelief and pain. He cradled her closer, his thumb brushing over the blood at her side. "You're the only thing in this wretched world that can undo me." "Then let me," she whispered, her fingers trembling as they touched his jaw. He closed his eyes, pressing a kiss to her brow, light, reverent, aching. The storm in him quieted, just enough for reason to return. He called for his healers, his voice carrying through the night like thunder. When they came, he did not leave her side. By dawn, the courtyard was scrubbed clean of blood, though the stones still remembered. The corpses of the assassins hung from the gates, a message to any who might follow. Evelina woke in her chambers, pain dulled by herbs and salves. Caelan sat by her bed, his arm bandaged, his face hollow with exhaustion. He had not slept. "You should rest," she murmured. "I will when you do." She studied him, the hard lines of his face softened by the morning light. "Was it my father?" He didn't answer. The silence was enough. Her eyes burned, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. "Then it's not over. Dash, dash, no." He reached out, hesitated, then brushed a lock of hair from her face. "But it will be. I swear it on every grave my kind is buried." She caught his hand before he could pull away. "Don't promise vengeance, Caelan. Promise me you'll live." Something in his expression cracked. "You ask the impossible." "Then do it anyway," she whispered. "For me." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded, wordless. When he left to command his generals, she watched him go with a weight she couldn't name pressing against her chest. He was the monster who had destroyed her world, yet he had also become the only thing standing between her and its ashes. And she, who had sworn never to forgive him, was beginning to fear that she already had. Chapter 10. The Dawn Between Kingdoms. The scent of blood still lingered faintly in the halls. Even after the stone had been scrubbed clean, after the banners were rehung and the air sweetened with incense, the memory of the attack clung to the palace like a ghost refusing to leave. The werewolf guards had tripled their watch, and the great bronze gates remained barred, though the sun rose bright over the mountains. Caelan had not slept in 2 days. He stood in the war hall, a long table spread with scrolls and maps, the room heavy with tension. His generals, a mix of battle-scarred werewolves and wary human envoys, waited for his word, though none dared meet his gaze directly. The silver wound on his forearm was still raw and blistered, yet he ignored it. "She was the target," Caelan said at last, voice low, dangerous. "Not me. They wanted to end the treaty by killing their princess in my home and letting me take the blame." General Arik, his most loyal second, inclined his head. The assassins bore no crest, but the scent of the poison matched the mines of the southern valleys. Human lands. Caelan's jaw tensed. Then it was her kin. The envoy, a pale man dressed in the colors of the fallen human court, shifted uneasily. "Your Majesty, surely not all of them. Some among our kind still wish peace." Caelan's gaze cut through him like a blade. "Peace has never been a gift from your kind. It has always been something we bled for." The room fell silent. A faint tremor of restrained fury rippled through the king. So strong the candle flames flickered. Yet when he spoke again, his tone had softened, the anger reined in by something heavier. "My mate nearly died under my roof. My guards died defending her. My patience, however vast, is not endless." Arik stepped forward cautiously. "Sire, the council urges retaliation. The southern lords grow bold again." "No." Caelan turned away, staring out through the arched windows at the distant snow peaks. "Not yet. War is what they want. If I ride south, I will slaughter thousands of innocents and leave my people starving before winter's turn. I will not become what they call me." He exhaled slowly, the sound rough. "Find who sent those assassins. Quietly. I will deal with them myself." Arik bowed. "As you command." When the hall emptied, Caelan remained, alone with the weight of the throne and the ghosts of his choices. His father still lay weak and fevered, slipping further into shadow with each passing day. The burden of 2 crowns, his people's and now the one taken by conquest, sat heavy on his shoulders. And through it all, one image refused to leave him: Evelina's blood on his hands. Evelina woke to the faint sound of rain against her window. Her side still ached where the arrow had grazed her, but the pain was dull now, fading into memory. She had not seen Caelan since the night of the attack. He came and went like a storm, heard never seen, leaving the scent of smoke and iron in his wake. She had dreamed of him, though, of his eyes, gold and feral, when he thought she would die, of the way his hands trembled when he held her. That fear, so raw, so human, had undone something in her that no words could repair. When she rose from her bed, the maidservants bowed low and stammered that the king had forbidden her to leave her chambers until she was healed. Evelina ignored them. She wrapped a cloak around her shoulders and slipped out into the corridor, her bare feet silent against the stone. The palace felt different now, colder, quieter. The werewolves who passed her inclined their heads respectfully, but with something close to reverence. They had seen their king's wrath. They understood what she meant to him. She found him not in the council room or at his father's side, but in the training courtyard. Rain slicked the stones, pooling around his boots. His shirt was gone, his body glistening with sweat as he struck again and again at a wooden post until it splintered beneath his blows. Each movement was brutal, efficient, no grace, only pain turned into motion. "Caelan," she called softly. He froze. The sound of his name from her lips turned the air heavy. Slowly, he turned to face her. "You shouldn't be here," he said, breath ragged. "You're not well." "I'm fine." She took a cautious step closer. "You'll break yourself before you admit you're not." His mouth quirked, humorless. "Pain keeps me sane." "And solitude kills it," she replied. "Come inside." He didn't move. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the earth. Evelina approached, unbothered by the cold. When she reached him, she touched his arm gently. His skin was hot beneath her fingers, the muscle tense. "You're bleeding," she murmured. He looked down, almost surprised to see the small cuts along his knuckles. "It's nothing." She frowned and reached for the cloth she'd tucked into her cloak, pressing it to his hand. "Let me." He let her. The silence stretched between them, broken only by rain and breath. When she finished, she looked up and found him watching her with a gaze that stripped her bare. "You scare me," she whispered. "I should," he said, voice barely a rasp. "You don't." His jaw tightened. "You should hate me." "I tried," she said softly. "I failed." For the first time, something like hope flickered in his eyes. But it was brief. He pulled his hand back, stepping away. "I can't ask for what I don't deserve," he said, "and your heart is not a thing I'll take by force." Evelina stared at him, feeling the ache of unshed tears. "You think love is a choice?" "For me, it must be," he said bitterly, "because if it isn't, then every breath I take near you is a sin." Her voice trembled. "Caelan." He turned away before she could finish. "Rest, Evelina." "Please." That night the storm worsened. Lightning flashed over the mountains, thunder shaking the castle walls. Evelina lay awake, unable to quiet her thoughts. When she finally rose, she found herself walking again, barefoot, cloak trailing, drawn by something she couldn't name. The halls were dark, the torches guttering. She followed the faint scent of smoke and cedar until she reached the king's chambers. The door was open. Caelan sat by the fire, his head bowed, the weight of the day hanging heavy in the slump of his shoulders. His hands trembled slightly, the beast inside him restless. He had shifted earlier. She could smell the faint musk of fur and earth still clinging to him. He didn't notice her at first. "Caelan," she said softly. His head lifted, eyes dark under the firelight. "You should be asleep." "So should you." He gave a dry laugh. "Sleep does not come easy to monsters." Evelina crossed the room. "You're not a monster." He looked up, meeting her gaze with something hollow and raw. "Tell that to the dead." "I will," she whispered, "because I've seen the man who mourns them." He said nothing as she knelt beside his chair. For a long moment, the only sound was the fire crackling between them. Then she reached out and touched his hand. He flinched. "Evelina." "Let me," she said, and took his hand in both of hers. The tension in him was unbearable, a living thing. He was shaking, not from fear, but from the endless effort of holding himself together. She rose slightly, her other hand cupping his cheek, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You can stop fighting for one night," she murmured. "You've already won." His breath hitched. "You don't understand." "I do." She smiled faintly. "Because I'm tired of fighting too." For a long moment he didn't move. Then, with a quiet sigh that sounded like surrender, Caelan reached for her. He drew her gently into his lap, his arms wrapping around her as though afraid she might disappear. Evelina rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady, thunderous rhythm of his heart beneath her ear. His scent, pine, steel, and something wild, wrapped around her like warmth in the cold. They stayed that way for a long time, neither speaking. The storm raged beyond the windows, but inside there was only the crackle of fire and the steady hum of his breath. When she finally spoke, Her voice was soft enough to be mistaken for a dream. "Do you ever wish things were different?" "Every day," he answered. "But if they were, I would never have found you." She smiled faintly. "That's unfair." "So is life." Her fingers toyed with the edge of his tunic. "You think we can make it work? A wolf and a human?" His hand came up to cradle the back of her neck. "We already are." For the first time since she'd been taken from her father's halls, Evelina felt peace, not because her pain was gone, but because it had somewhere to rest. She fell asleep like that, curled against him as his chin rested atop her head, his hand tracing circles on her back until her breathing evened out. He stayed awake long after, watching the firelight dance across her face. And for the first time, Caelan allowed himself to hope. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky was clear, a pale blue stretching endless over the mountains. When Evelina woke, she found herself still in his arms, his cloak wrapped around them both. He stirred as she shifted, eyes blinking open, gold and soft with sleep. "Good morning," she whispered. He grunted quietly, a sound half wolf, half man. "You stayed." "I did." "You shouldn't have." "I wanted to." He smiled then, small, unguarded, and heartbreakingly human. "You'll undo me, little queen." "Then let me," she said and leaned forward, pressing a kiss to his brow. He caught her wrist before she could pull away. "Evelina." She met his gaze steadily. "I love you." The words hung between them, fragile and unstoppable. His eyes widened slightly, the air leaving his lungs in a shuddered breath. "I don't deserve that," he murmured. "Maybe not," she said softly, "but you've earned it." He stared at her as if the world had stilled around them. Then, slowly, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. It was not the desperate kiss of nights past. It was gentle, reverent, a promise sealed in quiet. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "You are my dawn," he whispered, "the light I never thought to see again." "And you," she replied, "are the reason I finally see the truth." Outside, the first birds sang, their songs drifting through open windows. Below in the courtyards, the people of both bloods, wolf and human, moved side by side, uncertain but no longer afraid. The war that had begun in vengeance ended in something far rarer. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. And as the sun rose over the twin kingdoms, the Wolf King held his human queen close, knowing that whatever came next, neither would face it alone.